listeners, and welcome to the Hero Index podcast, the podcast where we discuss all the best news in movies, comic books, and sci-fi. I'm your host, Marcus McNeil, joined here by my usual panel, David Murphy. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Merry Christmas to all our listeners, and a Happy New Year, depending when this goes out.
And Aaron Keepers.
Yeah, happy holidays.
So, as we go through the holidays here, and we're wrapping down to the end of the year, 2018 is quickly approaching for better and worse in many respects for this year. We decided we're going to go through and really cover some of the best topics of 2017, some of the best projects, performances, and things that come out this year. Of course, we have been treated to a lot. And to really get reception for these things, I went out to you guys, our listeners and readers over at HeroIndex.net. I submitted the survey to you guys, put up a Facebook post to let everybody go and vote on what their favorite projects in the categories that we outlined this year would be. And very happy with how many people turned out and voted on this. There was a late push yesterday that actually ended up deciding a number of these categories. So some things were really very, very down to the wire, very close. And now all the winners have fully emerged. So we're going to be going over those, announcing the winners, some of the runners-up, and just giving our opinions on the turnout and what we thought about these projects over the year. Now, personally, I really had to focus on some things to cover here and some things not to, just with so much glut of superhero shows, sci-fi shows, just everything that is in the sphere right now. These categories could have been numerous, immense, and so many things. I had some feedback from people stating that some of the things that they like didn't make it onto the list. I gotta agree with that. Some things that I also like also didn't make it onto the list, but some of them may have been a little bit too off the cusp or away from the mainstream, where they really, whether I put them there or not, they would not get voted on and get the recognition they deserve. So the list is a little bit populist, but I think they're all populist for a reason. There's some really solid standouts this year. And we'll go into the first category right now. Now, this category was Best Science Fiction Movie. This was a hard one because sci-fi has been a hard sort of genre to cover. I know, David, you and I talk a lot about that. There's just not a lot, at least motion picture-wise, to cover in this. So we kind of did the best we can with the things that we had available this year.
Sure. What were the nominations again?
Yep, the nominees were Blade Runner 2049, War for the Planet of the Apes, Okja, which I got some feedback on this one. Some people debating whether it's pure fantasy or sci-fi.
I'd
give it a better chance.
I go
sci-fi.
It's sci-fi film.
Sci-fi.
Yeah. Life and Star Wars The Last Jedi, which just came out last week. So this one was rather contentious, but really, as it started to go on and more people voted, a clear winner determined from the list here. First and foremost, the runner-up that captured 25.9% of the vote you guys turned in was War for the Planet of the Apes. Guys, it just seems like a lot of people really love this movie. Came out as a strong contender right here at the number 2 spot.
Yeah, I really liked War for the Planet of the Apes. In fact, it was the one I voted for this category. I thought it wasn't perfect. It was a bit too similar to its predecessor, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. But likewise, if you hadn't seen Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, you'd be all at sea, I think, for a lot of the film. But it had some fantastic political allegory in there. Possibly the best dissection of white supremacy I've seen on the big screen this year. I think almost in any media. Actually, the idea that these people are terrified of losing their voice showed a tremendous amount of empathy with how, these people who are being drawn to the far right are actually feeling at the moment. Not that for any point it sympathised with them or made them aspirational, carefully. So, yeah, I'm glad to see that got some recognition. Shame it didn't win, actually.
Well, the winner was Blade Runner 2049. Okay. Not a huge surprise there, but it did capture 40.7% of the vote. So overwhelming majority of people really like this film, and I have to agree with them personally. This is a movie that I voted on for this. A couple of them came down to my opinion possibly being a tiebreaker for some of these. This was not one of them. It was very much so one of the early deciders as we went through some of these categories, where we saw, okay, this is taking so much of the vote that no way it's going to swing it now. It's going to take it away from it. And I think it's real testament to what Denis Villeneuve was able to do with this franchise, coming back after 30 years and really making a standout film for the year.
I did like it. I think the main thing to take away from Blade Runner 2049, I'm surprised how it hasn't stuck with me as much as I thought that it would do. But at the same point, they didn't screw it up. It was very, very difficult task. They had, following up to a seminal classic from 35 years ago that has completely changed sci-fi and cinema as a whole forever. And in fact, the whole world that we live in, it's starting to resemble more and more what Blade Runner looks like. So whether that, was one of those things where it predicted it, or it actually, by existing, has changed the way the world looks. So, yeah, I think it was... I can understand why it's won. It's easily the most notable sci-fi film this year, I think. And it's obviously the one that made the biggest impression, despite the fact it didn't do particularly well at the box office. But that's par for the course for Blade Runner. And I'm sure it will enjoy a long, healthy life, I think, as a film. It's a worthy successor, I'd say.
Now, Aaron, usually me and David run a bit of a He-Man woman haters club when it comes to some of these discussions that we have with the movies, but were you able to catch Blade Runner 2049 and have any opinions on it?
That was actually one that I just didn't quite make it to this year. I always intended to, and I think that might be kind of how a lot of people felt about it, and why one of the reasons why it didn't really do great in the box office is it was I definitely want to see that one, but then when it got around to trying to go to the theater, it just was just somehow kind of never crossed my mind. But yeah, everything I heard critically from it sounded amazing, and I'm sure it's going to stand up to the test of time the way that the original has done. Well, at least the original director's cut version. Do we know if we're going to be seeing any kind of alternate cuts of 2049?
I think that's a distinct.
No,
I think that's a possibility still. I think there were
really.
I think there are elements.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think this.
I thought Denis Villeneuve might have stated that what he wanted in the film ended up in the film, and there was really no need for him to make a director's cut in that regard.
There were elements of the film that I thought, strangely, there were elements in the screenplay that seemed simultaneously overcooked, and then there were other elements that seemed underdeveloped. The AI, riffing on Spike Jonze's Her, that took up far too much screen time in the film, I thought. But then again, the replicant uprising, that just seemed to come in from nowhere, and there was a lot more to explore there. I think I'd like to see an extended cut for it. I think it would flesh out a few more elements of the film. If it doesn't exist, well, that's shit for me then, I suppose.
I'd be game for it too. Now, if anyone was wondering how the rest of the vote turned out, this is where it's a little bit surprising. Okja captured 18.5% of the vote. Star Wars The Last Jedi all the way down at 14.8% of the vote. So looks like, although enjoying a lot of success here, from a lot of people's opinions, the Star Wars The Last Jedi just did not quite do it for them in that sort of vein that War for the Planet of the Apes, and definitely not the vein that Blade Runner 2049 did.
No, I think there's been enough discussion about Star Wars, but I'm not surprised to see it. I'm surprised it didn't beat Okja, but I'm not surprised it didn't head off either Blade Runner or War for the Planet of the Apes. The backlash is real to it. I think it's been overpronounced in the degree of it, but I think a lot of people weren't particularly satisfied. Or even if they did enjoy it, I think a lot of people still don't think it's a truly great film, put it that way.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are enjoying it, but I think Last Jedi is going to be one of those that people forget about very quickly.
Unfortunately so. Now we'll go ahead and skip to the next category here. Here is the nominees for Best Superhero Movie of 2017. This was another category that was quite contentious for a while. I did not know how it was going to split, and some things really changed hands and changed leads as the voting went on. But so far, the nominees were Logan, Thor Ragnarok, Justice League, Wonder Woman, and Spider-Man: Homecoming. Pretty much all the superhero films this year, and we were able to throw into this category. And for the runner-up, this is one that was looking for a long time, like it was going to come out on top, but it is Logan, capturing 28.6% of the vote. Logan is our runner-up here. Aaron, do you have any thoughts on Logan capturing the second place and this position so far amongst the category?
Well, we had a lot of really, really strong, like surprisingly strong superhero movies come out this year. Like, did you actually end up putting Guardians of the Galaxy 2 on there?
Oh, looks like an omission on my part. Yeah.
I was going to say, because that was a really good one. Thor made a last-minute standout.
In retrospect, I think to have 3 Marvel films up there might have been...
That's fair. That's fair. But yeah.
Maybe for the sake of diversity, it was okay to get some other things in there.
Absolutely. And the fact that Logan came out so early in the year means that more people will have had time to kind of think about it and watch it multiple times. And so I can see how it could have really gone either way for a lot of these movies this year. I think I could scratch a couple off the list immediately of which ones I knew wouldn't win, but this is not a category that I was looked at and was like, oh yeah, that's going to win.
David?
I think it is the best superhero film of the year. Yet again, I've gone for the runner-up. It's the one that we're going to be talking about for many years to come, but I'm not sure what the winner is yet, so I'm not going to say what else I think will be as well. But I thought this was, the first film we've seen probably since The Dark Knight that's really threatening to throw the genre into a different direction. It was very serious. It was kind of this futuristic Western. It was a very strange, almost non-canonical take on the characters. It was just very, very brave, I thought. And I'm glad that it made...
Really fresh, too, yeah.
And it made quite an impact at the box office, because I don't think that Fox were expecting it to do all that well. It had quite a small budget relative for the genre. It was only about 60-something million. So, yeah, I'm glad it's found an audience so quickly and it's been so widely appreciated. But yeah, I think this one will stand the test of time much better than the rest of the list.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you, David. This was also the film that I voted on, so I ended up along with the runner-up here. I knew it was something special because once it hit DVD, I went out and bought this movie, and I don't feel very, enthusiastic about doing those sort of things a lot lately. It's like, if I want to see it, it's just as easy to stream it whenever I want to, but this is something that I wanted in my home, in my collection, that I was going to be able to view repeatedly, and that's what I wound up doing. The winner here, but is also another great pick, and it just goes to show how well this movie was executed. The winner with 35.7% of the vote here is Thor Ragnarok. Came out with top honors so far. So it was really neck and neck between Logan and Thor Ragnarok, but the people have spoken, and this is their favorite superhero film of the year. Aaron, do you think that Thor was really deserving of the top honors here?
I mean, I voted for it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I think it does what a lot of people really want superhero movies to do right now, which is to just be quality entertainment. Like, it had a lot of really funny moments. It had a lot of action. The visuals were pretty impressive in a way that it didn't just feel like every other Marvel movie that they've made recently. It felt like they were just kind of like bouncing stuff off the walls just to be like, I don't know, whatever, just we're having fun. And even the actors and the director and everybody were saying, like, they're like, yeah, we just really want to just go out and have a good time, and we came out with a good movie. So I can definitely see why this one would stand out. I think that's definitely due to the reception that, say, like Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one got, and the second one, of just kind of giving them a little bit more room to play with and be just kind of fun. But I think, I don't know, this was the first Thor movie that really stood out as something special, and it definitely has kind of breathed a little bit more life, at least for me, into the Marvel series.
David, I know this is also a movie that you were high on this year, another one you had the opportunity to review. What are your thoughts on Thor Ragnarok earning the top spot?
I did really enjoy it. I thought it's the best Marvel film since the first Guardians of the Galaxy. In fact, there could be a case to make it that it's the best since Avengers. But I'm a big fan of Taika Waititi. I think that is definitely how you pronounce it now. I've seen enough interviews with him now.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of his work anyway. He has not made a bad film. He's now made 4, 5, possibly 4, I think. And every one of them... no, he has made 5, sorry. And every one of them is very worthy of his superior comic talent. And I was surprised at how much room he got to breathe inside the MCU. I mean, Jeff Goldblum's character just looked like he didn't even have a script. Every scene he was in seemed to be improvised. But
he's just Goldbluming all over the place. It was lovely.
Yeah, he's just basically turned up and did his thing. But it worked, and that was the important thing. And I think it just goes to show how strong the Marvel formula can be now. And this is one of the occasions where it worked rather than being to the detriment of the film. You know, Spider-Man Homecoming, I thought that just being another Marvel film really didn't work for it. It was too predictable and not enough given the weight of the character who was coming back into the MCU. But this, yeah, it's like Aaron said, it's by far the best Thor movie, easily the most entertained I've been by a Marvel film for a very long time. I'd happily watch it again. I don't normally feel that way about Marvel films. I normally just watch them once and go, okay, yeah, I had fun while watching it. I mean, they're kind of like the Chinese food of cinema, really. You like it when you're eating it, but then 2 hours later you're hungry again. And it's like that with Marvel. It's like, I watch it, it's like, yeah, this is great. And then 2 hours later I've forgotten all about it. But this one, though, it stuck with me. Comic timing was absolutely spot on. And yeah, I'm in a way I'm glad to see it's won. I'm surprised Wonder Woman didn't get a little bit more recognition, but there we go.
Well, we'll get to that too. First, I'll just say my thoughts on Thor Ragnarok. I really love this film. I thought that it really did a great job of setting the tone. And in one way, Logan was a very risky project, but Thor Ragnarok also does not get enough credit for being a risky project for Marvel. I think having something like Guardians of the Galaxy helped to set the tone for what will eventually be taken with Thor Ragnarok, but has so much going on to it, and in many ways is a bit of a zanier, more off-the-wall concept than even Guardians was, and it worked super well. There's so much to like in this movie. It's really dense with character interactions and a little nods to the greater Marvel universe, and at the end of the day, you mentioned this, Aaron, it's just a fun movie. It's just something that we can go in, munch popcorn to. When you see, Thor fighting hell demons and, Immigrant Song is playing, and then you get stuff like Matt Damon cameos, it really sets the tone for how this movie is going to play out, and every opportunity it can take to do something different, whether funny or with action, it does it, and it works to great effect. Now, here we'll just discuss some of the other contenders here and how they fared in this category. Wonder Woman came in at third place, capturing 21.4% of the vote, so not doing all that much worse than Logan. Spider-Man Homecoming took 10.7%, and Justice League was way, way, way down there with only 3.6% of the vote. So kind of goes lockstep with our discussion here. I figured I'd give the DC lovers a little bit something extra to chew on. I knew it didn't stand a chance, the Walsh chance in hell, but it was going to be fun to see how people received it. And I think Spider-Man Homecoming, although a movie that I really like and I think is one of the better of the Spider-Man films, maybe when it comes down to it, just didn't do quite enough to wow everyone, but still yet another dependably solid film from Marvel Studios.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought Tom Holland actually did a really good job as that character in a way that we haven't seen before. I'm kind of surprised that one didn't do better in the polls, really. But yeah, Justice League, no surprise. Wonder Woman, I can see how, I really go back and forth on Wonder Woman, just my own personal feelings for that movie. And I can definitely see the appeal, but I just don't see Wonder Woman being stronger than almost any other movie on that list.
I too have mixed feelings about Wonder Woman, but I think in terms of impact, no other superhero film has had more than Wonder Woman this year. It certainly drove a lot of conversation around the time of its release. It is ostensibly just a very traditional comic book movie, though, and I think that's possibly the DCU's whole problem, is that it seems to behave like the last 20 years of comic book movies just haven't happened. But in Wonder Woman's case, that worked to its advantage because it went down back to the kind of almost Richard Donner-like template of Superman. And it served it really well. I thought Patty Jenkins' direction was absolutely superb. Easily the best directed superhero film I saw this year. But yeah, I'm surprised it didn't get a bit more recognition. I don't know, maybe people have just... It's such a prominent and varied genre now that I suppose being just competent isn't enough.
Doesn't cut it anymore. Yeah,
isn't enough. It is for the DCU, obviously. In fact, it's a huge.
Oh,
step
Wonder Woman
up.
was the standout of the DCU movies for sure.
But
and I think that somehow worked to his detriment too, because when it comes down to it, although I really liked Wonder Woman, it is possibly the most overrated film of the year so far. I know a lot of that is due to the social implications, and of course having a big female-led superhero film finally and having it take place. It was quite the success at the box office. It did quite well critically. But yeah, like you mentioned, David, when it comes down to it, it's just simply a competent superhero film. I rather enjoyed it, but it's not one of those things that I would rush to watch again. You know, it's not one of those things that demands repeat viewings, and even one of those things where I say, like, hey, some of the best superhero movies out there, here's my recommendations. I don't think I can really put Wonder Woman in amongst those as something that truly stands out that people have to rush out and go see. All right, now we're going to go to the next category. This one was kind of hard for me to pick some of the selections here because, of course, this one is for Best Genre Movie. There's so many genres out there, of course, and so many movies that may have been worthy of it this year, but I just really want to go with the ones that really stood out to me. The nominees for this category are Baby Driver, Kingsman: The Secret Service, Get Out, It, and Dunkirk. So this one really, I thought would be much more contentious when I laid all this out and I tried to structure the nominees in such a way that would lead to this. But wow, one of these really stood out amongst everyone else. But first, let's discuss the runner-up. That one was Christopher Nolan's film Dunkirk, came out with 23.1% of the vote here. This was not one I had the opportunity to see, but David, I know this was one of the films that you really enjoyed this year too.
if I'd seen it, I might have done. I never got round to it.
Oh, did you not see it?
Oh, no.
Oh, sorry. I thought you did see it.
No,
This is not one that I saw
I
either.
can't remember why.
no.
It was tabled for a review for ages, and then for some reason it didn't happen, and I just didn't get round to it. And I've got it. I've currently got it waiting to watch, and I haven't got round to it. I'm going to be honest. I'm not the biggest Christopher Nolan fan. I think he's an interesting and remarkable director, but he does have a certain kind of, I don't know, autism or something when it comes to dealing with characters and people. I can't remember the last Christopher Nolan film I saw where I felt that two people were having a proper conversation. People are always they're either delivering exposition or planning or stating intentions, and they don't seem to discuss anything else. And I don't know how that would translate into a war film. But I've heard amazing things about it. I hear it's structured very interestingly, which is something that Christopher Nolan is masterful at, which is why The Dark Knight Rises was such a surprise that it was so horribly structured. But, you know, as I have misgivings about Inception, but the structure of that film is absolutely fantastic. Obviously, Memento, which to me is still his best film, brilliantly innovative. Batman Begins, I think, is wonderfully structured as well. That tells, actually quite a non-linear story when you think about it, and it does it brilliantly. It does it to the point where you don't notice. So I'd be interested to see it. Obviously, people like it a lot because it's Christopher Nolan. I think any other war film, we wouldn't have even considered it. But Nolan obviously puts it into our realm. So, yeah, sorry, listeners. I think we're possibly not the best people to discuss it.
Actually, now that you mention it, David, do you think that maybe some of the results here, I mean, I'm just personally feeling this way because it's some of my bias, but I haven't had a chance to see Dunkirk, but with some of the other nominees here, especially with it, which I expected to do a far better showing than it had, Dunkirk rather trounced it soundly, and I haven't seen Dunkirk to be able to say an opinion, but it's hard for me to believe that Christopher Nolan pulled out a more crowd-pleasing film than they were able to do with that.
Well, so here's the thing, is that Dunkirk was sort of pitched as and presented as a war film, and I'm not really sure that's true. It's almost a psychological thriller that just happens to be taking place during wartime. Was more how it seemed while I was watching it. And because the thing is you never once see an enemy soldier. You don't ever see, you see the enemy plane, the German planes, but you don't actually see any German soldiers. You hear at one point, they're kind of like in the background, you hear German shouting, and like they get shot at. The French and the British soldiers get shot at, but that's about it. So you've got this enemy hanging overhead that's just this threatening cloud of uncertainty and can come out of nowhere, and you don't see it coming. You just hear it, and so it's a very interestingly paced movie. I wouldn't say it's his strongest, in the sense that he goes back and forth with the timing a little bit. Like you'll see something from one person's perspective and then it kind of changes, and a little bit later we come back to that same event from a different perspective. So I think the timing of the movie didn't really work for me, but I definitely could appreciate what he was going for, and I liked that it wasn't the traditional sort of wartime film that we typically get. So I can definitely see why a lot of people would enjoy it and would appreciate it for what it is, and the fact that it's so different.
Yeah, that's a very different way to look at these sort of wartime conflicts. Now, without further ado, we'll get to the winner of this category, capturing a whopping 46.2% of your votes was Get Out. This movie was really on the tips of everyone's tongues. Just came out earlier in the year, but it's maintained such a steady word-of-mouth spread that it became one of the most financially successful movies we've seen in a long time. I had a chance to view this movie too. I really loved it. It's one of my best selections of the year so far. This kind of lands on something outside of our usual repertoire here, David. So we didn't do any sort of review for it or anything with Hero Index, but I was wondering if you had the opportunity to see this movie and your opinions on it winning Best Genre Movie of the Year.
Well, it is my film of the year by quite some distance, actually. I just thought it was a really bold and really provocative take on the issues of race in America at the moment, having had to witness Bright, which completely fucked it up into a degree where it was, I don't use this word lightly either because it's bandied around far too much these days, but I do think Bright was actually genuinely offensive in the way it tried to frame racial tensions. I tore it apart. I gave it my first F, didn't I? My first F of the year.
Yep, that's right.
But Get Out is at the opposite end of that spectrum. I thought it was very interesting the way it took aim at liberals, rather than it didn't cast it in an obvious light. They weren't, rednecks or conservatives or Republicans or any easy targets like that. No, it went for, the people who were supposed to, sympathise with these kinds of things. But at the same point, it showed the hypocrisy sometimes that's inherent within, people who think they're looking out for, the kind of patronising attitude that some people think that liberals have at times towards, the race issues and stuff. And yeah, I can see it's already entering into the lexicon. I'm seeing people starting to use the sunken place. When Tiger Woods goes and plays golf with Donald Trump, I know that the that started to trend on Twitter. So yeah, I mean, I guess essentially it's just an episode of Black Mirror, really, but a really, really brilliant episode of Black Mirror. And yeah, I think if I have one misgiving about it, the ending was a little bit too crowd pleasing. I would have rather it stuck to the original ending that was supposed to be that he did get arrested at the end. But I
didn't know that.
Yeah, he apparently, but he wanted to change it because he wanted a bit more of an upbeat. He wanted to make it seem like he had genuinely escaped, and certainly when I saw it in the theatre, everyone cheered at that moment. But yeah, it's a strange film because it's a message film. It's obviously very provocative, but it's also turned out to be a real crowd pleaser as well. So yeah, much deserved, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually almost thought it would end up in the sci-fi category.
It could have been.
Yeah.
I thought it's a much better chance, though, being in this category.
Oh, no,
a
I
genre
think,
film, such a bent so many different ways.
Exactly. I really do think that it is its own entity. Like, I don't necessarily think there's a simple description of what this movie is and what he was trying to accomplish with it. I definitely think that it was just so fascinating to hear this describe, like the conversation described in such a way. It was framed so much differently than we typically hear. I think it was an incredibly essential movie to come out this year.
Yeah, it's also one of those movies where I say if you only watch this movie once, you got to watch it again because there's so much that Jordan Peele, especially for his first film, was able to layer into this movie, and just subtle character quirks and lines of dialogue, things like that you sort of pick up on. I think kind of in the vein that maybe Christopher Nolan is not very a strong person when it comes to interactions. I think this is Jordan Peele's benefit, how much he's able to get by simple familial interactions between people in this movie is really what builds on the tension of the film. It's not outright scary film or anything like that. It's the discomfort and unease that you feel with some of these interpersonal and interracial interactions in the film. So I think that's really one of the standouts, and I totally see. And it's also the movie that I voted for here to be the best genre film of the year. I think that's something that's almost without discussion in a way.
Yeah. So did we all vote for Get Out in that one?
Yeah, I think so.
We might have carried that vote a little bit.
And then just how the rest of it rounded out, number 3 was Baby Driver, captured 15.4% of the vote. It was rather low with 11.5% of the take in this category. I thought it would fare a little bit better. And Kingsman: The Secret Service way down there with 3.8%. So kind of confirms a lot of people felt about that installment of the film. But are either one of you guys surprised that it is popular and successful and well reviewed of a movie really got trounced so soundly by two sort of more lower budget, more kind of to the cusp, both in terms of direction and appeal, movies like Dunkirk and Get Out?
I think it's just in a very tough category. I'm not surprised at its placing, and I think that's where, if I was ranking all of these films, that's where I'd rank it, to be honest. I did enjoy it very much. I even went to see it twice, but it is a bit, as brilliant as it is at its job, it is by the numbers. I think it didn't do anything extraordinary, but I think people were just relieved likewise that it didn't screw it up. Stephen King is very, very difficult to adapt. We know this. We've seen it plenty of times. It's gone horribly wrong for a lot of productions, but when you get it right, yeah, they can rise to be some of the very best examples of cinema we've ever seen. I'm not sure it is quite in that league, but it is a very, very good horror film. It's now the most successful horror film of all time, and as soon as I saw it, I knew it was going to be as well. I knew that's one of those rarest of breeds, a genuine horror blockbuster. They're very few and far between these days. But yeah, I'm not surprised. Baby Driver, I think, possibly would have placed a bit higher if it hadn't been for the Kevin Spacey thing this year. For a film that relies so much on its effervescent, it's really taken the edge off it. I've wanted to watch it again, but once that stuff started to come out, I'm a bit like, am I going to be comfortable watching it? It's a difficult time for a lot of Hollywood and TV, that so many people are getting tarred with this brush. Some of them deservedly so, others, well, I don't know. Some of it seems a bit...
true shame for Edgar Wright, too,
yes.
which is Baby Driver's his most successful film, and really many say one of the best films he's been able to make. But we're running a little long in this category.
Okay.
We're going to skip over to the next one. So this category was for Best Sci-Fi TV Series. This is where, fortunately, television has been a much riper playground for the realm of science fiction than movies have been this year. So far, our nominees this year were Westworld, Orphan Black, Black Mirror, Stranger Things, Star Trek Discovery, and Doctor Who. This one was rather contentious for a long time. Actually, I thought, and I think I sent the email to you guys too, that this category had been decided, and I announced the winner. Late flood of responses from you guys actually flipped the results. So coming in at number 2 with 22.2% of the vote is HBO's Westworld. Kind of a surprising one here because it was the early lead for a very long time. This is not one I've been able to catch. It's actually in my queue for HBO Go to get around to this because I've been wrapped up watching so much other media this year. It's just one that I was so late to. Similar way for me with Game of Thrones. I probably won't be able to come to this until maybe a couple of seasons are in the books. David, were you able to catch any of Westworld and opinions on its turnout right now?
Well, I'm slightly surprised it's done so well, given that it came out last year.
Did it bleed through this year, though? I thought I looked
No, I'm sure it didn't. I'm sure because I remember talking about it with my friend at Christmas last year. But we'll take it. We'll take it. I got bored of it. I got genuinely quite tired of it. I know a lot of people like it, and I know what happens at the end. And I think that was quite a good twist. But really, it should have started with that. I think it pondered around the concept too much for my liking. I mean, the film itself is only, the Michael Crichton film, it's only like 80 or 90 minutes long, and even that feels padded in places. So turning it into a TV series has been a massive task. I'm not sure how else they could have done it without having to flesh it out like this, but I do think it's a bit pretentious. I do. So I'm not a fan. I don't know if Aaron feels differently.
Oh, I just realized too, sorry, but this category was also tied, so this is how, even though this took place last year, I think since it came so late into the year last year that a lot of people really weren't able to review it in the scope of the year's best. But yeah, we also were in a hiatus point at that point in time too, so we didn't get a chance to discuss it a whole lot. But yeah, it got tied for number 2 spot, also taking 22.2% was Black Mirror, so Westworld, Black Mirror tied for this runner-up spot.
I liked Westworld. I think I ended up binging the whole thing in one day with my roommate, because he loved it. And I think one of the really driving parts was there were so many really powerful just monologues, that there were just so many iconic moments kind of scattered throughout the show that it felt a lot more important than I think the show actually was. I think it was done in such a way that it kind of tricked you into thinking that it was much more profound. And obviously Anthony Hopkins' performance is just phenomenal. He's just such a strong actor. You just get, anytime he was on screen,
which is so rare for him to turn in a good performance. He's a real schmuck from time to time.
Yeah, but this was a
Anthony
good one
Hopkins
for
is
him.
ever dependable, even when he's phoning it in. He's always good to watch.
So yeah, I think that helped carry a lot of it. I think it was one of those where it was just clever enough, and I think it accomplished what it was trying to be. So I think in my mind it was a very solid piece, and I really do actually want another season out of it. Black Mirror, though, I've only ever seen one episode, and that was in the first season of it. So I'm not really sure what they're doing anymore. I've been told 1,000 times, like, oh, you have to watch Black Mirror, you have to watch it. But it's always just seemed uncomfortable and gross, and just, I don't know. It's the idea of the show has always kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So I think I've just never gotten around to it.
It's a tense show. And for the winner for this category, taking in 33.3%, a perfect third, was Stranger Things. This is one that, as I was monitoring the polling, was back there for a while, but overwhelming flood of votes came in for it and had it take the top spot here, which I'm not certain how I feel about it, although I love Stranger Things. I really did like Stranger Things Season 2. I just think there's stronger overall shows out here, but I could see why the nostalgia factor played such a part in both the popularity of this show and how it's rated and viewed by some people. So I don't exactly dispute the results, but at the same time, I would rather like to see something else sort of get a fair shake here in the category. But hey, Stranger Things is a phenomenon, and it took the top spot for the sci-fi category.
Yeah, I think popularity is king in this genre. That's by far the most watched show, I think, in there. I like the second season. I think it was just as enjoyable as the first, but I don't think it had the same level as impact. And I'm still not sure about that standalone 11 episode where she went off into
to Chicago.
Yeah. That felt a bit. It felt like it could have been interspersed into other episodes. I don't know why they made that decision. It kind of shattered this idea that Netflix have started to get really good at this idea that their TV series are just like 8-hour long films and stuff like that. And that's how I felt about the first season, and I really like that. This got broken up by that. I think the fact that it just kind of resets at the end as well, that they kind of subdue the threat, but they don't get rid of it, and then it just appears as it was before. I'm not really sure where they're going to go from here on in. I didn't feel like it got to the end and I'm like, oh, I can't wait for season 3. I felt like, yeah, I'm not really sure where you're going to go apart from just to repeat the same trick again. So, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel like they could easily wrap up the entire series with just this season with the way it ended.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not surprised to see it at the top of the list.
Yeah. Where did the others... Where did the other things in the category end up? Specifically Orphan Black, which I think was my pick for this category.
Orphan Black was actually one of the top competitors in this category. It's doing rather well. It ended at 11.1%, but it was as high as 24% at one point in time before Stranger Things start to sort of eat up the rest of the categories. Doctor Who finished with 7.4%, and Star Trek Discovery taking in 3.7% of the vote. So they kind of worked out the way you would assume this category would go. Not a lot of surprises here. All right, so with that one in the can, we're going to go to the next one. This one was really a 2-horse race for most of it. It looked like it had been decided, but another late push by you guys voting really ended up swinging it in a different direction. For Best Superhero TV Series, our nominees were Legion, Punisher, Runaways, Defenders, Arrow, and The Flash. Taking the number 2 spot in this category with 36% of the vote, a very, very big share. We saw, some of the other categories get one with less of a share, was The Punisher. This one was actually the front runner for a long time. At one point, had as much as 60% of the vote before things started to change a little bit. This seems to be something that a lot of people like, and Aaron, I know we were discussing some of this earlier this year too. It's contentious and very hard to get through series, but one that I think people ultimately felt very rewarded by. And I see a lot of people state that it's the best of the Marvel Netflix shows, right up there with Daredevil in their opinion.
Personally, I'm not sure about that. But I definitely can recognize, I think, the traits that made it stand out so much to so many people. The acting, I'm blanking on his name, the Punisher.
John Bernthal.
Yes, his acting is incredible. He's always brought so much life to that character. And just a depth that I didn't actually expect to see when I heard that they were bringing him from the comics into, the Netflix MCU. I kind of expected that they wouldn't do the character justice, and so it's very pleasing to see that they have. But overall, I think when you announced it kind of early on, you had said that one was probably going to win, and I was just cringing. I was just like, no, there's better on that list.
Punisher is actually a series I rather like. Like a lot of people were mentioning, I shared a sentiment that was very hard to get through because even coming off of seeing the character debut in Daredevil, it's a very hard show to get through because it's very violent. It's very hard hitting. It took it in a different direction. I think this is why it resonated with so many people, because rather than be a simple shoot 'em up actioneer, it took the time to build drama, to build character development, and to really make a statement in terms of veteran affairs and veterans' mental health in this country. And I think that I saw so many veterans commenting about The Punisher, saying that it's one of the more realistic depictions of PTSD and the struggle that veterans go through that they've seen in any sort of media. So I think it didn't shy away from some hard topics and really rang true and drove the message home to many people with the topics that it brings up. The violence was NC-17 levels of gore and terribleness sometimes, but I think all that really helped build it into something that people felt captivated by, and it took it in a direction where this could be a very one-note character, really bridged it and used it as a platform to say something about society and about really the state of this whole military industrial complex in this country. And I think that it worked very well for many people in that regard. And David, I don't think this is one you didn't have a chance to get to.
I haven't seen it, but I am actually familiar with the character of the Punisher, and in fact, it's one of the few comics I did used to read. And I think really its popularity shows that this is an audience that's maturing, and we need content like this coming in. That we do need a lot more comic book adaptations with a more adult tone. I'm glad they've realised the character as well as they have, apparently, from what I've heard. So it's all good. But yeah, I think this is the one that I have probably the least to say on. So I'm going to just take a little break while you guys discuss the rest of the titles. I'll be back presently.
With that said, David, thank you. We're going to go into the winner of the category, capturing 40% of your vote. Legion came out on top. This is one of my favorite, really, of anything this year. I love this series. I was one of the early adopters to it and was really banging a drum, trying to get as many people as I know to watch this. So I'm pretty happy it came out on top. I could have went either way with Legion or Punisher, but I'm glad Legion got the due recognition it deserves. I also know this is something you were pretty high on, Aaron. So
Absolutely.
What do you think about Legion taking top honors here?
I think it's well deserved. I really... My sister hadn't seen it yet, so this Christmas break, when we were both home with our parents, that was what we ended up watching, was Legion. And the first time I was sitting down trying to get through it all, it felt very, very dense, very emotional, and it was just like I could not get through more than about 2 episodes in one sitting. And it still felt that way for me, trying to get through it this time. My sister said it wasn't that intense for her, but... I still don't think we ever actually watched more than 1 episode at a time without some decent, like, other Christmas things getting in the way. So I don't think she had quite the experience with it that I did, but I just thought every performance was phenomenal. The visual effects were outstanding for television, especially for, it was FX? Fox?
Yeah, FX.
Yeah, yeah. So... I just thought that was incredible. It was just so much more than I could have possibly hoped for with that show. And I'm very pleased that it came out on top.
Yeah, there's so much to like here. Both the direction of Noah Hawley, the performance we got from Dan Stevens, Aubrey Plaza, Jermaine Clement, which I don't think he gets enough recognition for being a true standout in this series too. I just love the direction he's going as an actor with his career and everything right now. And yeah, this is one of those things where I told everybody it's going to be weird. It's going to be weird when you first start watching it and to get through some of it, but once you open yourself up and actually loosen what you have come to expect from this genre and from television in general, you really start getting the sense of what they're trying to accomplish here. Mm-hmm. And I think as time went on and more people adopted to it, it really became one of the standouts on television this year. So I'm very happy to see it take the top spot here.
Well, and my favorite thing still is with all the X-Men franchise right now, I like that not everything has to fit together as cleanly as with the Marvel movies. It's a little bit looser. It's not really clear if this is happening in even the same timeline as some of the other mutant stories, and that's totally fine. And I love that it just gets to be what it is with this unreliable narrator in this bizarre who knows when it's set. It doesn't matter. It's such a solid piece all on its own.
Yeah, it teaches you not to care about the little things. Time, all sorts of means of perception doesn't matter anymore. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to into the next series here. This category was best genre TV series. Another one we could have thrown a lot of things in. I tried to mix it up and get a few more feelings here, just with some of the things I saw a lot of people like this year. And I made some of the list, year-end list for some other sites out there. The nominees for this category were The Exorcist, a personal favorite of mine, Game of Thrones, Preacher, The Walking Dead, unfortunately, Lucifer, Man in the High Castle. I don't even think I need to be around the bush here while I even discuss the runner-up with a whopping incredible 62.5% of the vote. Game of Thrones came out on top, as expected. So even though this is a bit of a down year in many people's opinion, David, Game of Thrones is still the television show to beat in many regards.
Yeah, I can. Again, popularity is king. I think this is one of the lesser seasons of Game of Thrones, and it came very close to jumping the Stark, excuse the pun, with the penultimate episode, which was just Hollywood. It was everything that Game of Thrones isn't, and was very annoying to me that it's, although the show did have to transition, it did need to get a bit more focus, it did need to engage in a bit more spectacle, because seasons 3 and 4 were a bit tough going. It's lost some of its identity this season. I mean, if I can just speak about some of the other, well, not the others, but there was one show that missed the list for me, which was a bit disappointing, and I possibly should have nudged you to enter it in, but Twin Peaks, I think, deserves a mention. Episode. If that had been on the list, it would have gotten my vote. Preacher got my vote in the end. But episode 8 of Twin Peaks is the best piece of media I've seen this year by a huge distance. And in fact, it's one of the best things I've ever seen on television. The whole series as a whole, I'm not sure I entirely bought it, and I'm a huge David Lynch fan and Twin Peaks fan, and I still think it was a bit meandering and wandering, but yeah, just to throw it in there, just to chuck it a bone. But yeah, I'm not surprised to see Game of Thrones win. I'm still very intrigued by how it's going to end. I think they just saved themselves with the last episode, but it needs to get some of that politics, some of that the machinations back in there. If it's just going to be lots of dragons flying around and battle scenes in the last season, I think ultimately that's going to be a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I feel like the actual Game of Thrones and Game of Thrones was sorely lacking this season, but
that's
I also can't dispute. I also can't dispute the votes here, because as I go through and I watch more TV, especially having to cover things like The Walking Dead for the site and stuff like that, it's like, Jesus Christ, even being on an off season. I was like, even though the off season for Game of Thrones is still so fucking far beyond what some of these other shows are doing. Actually, what got my vote in this category, and I think I might have been the only person to vote for it, was The Exorcist. I think is the best show out there that nobody is watching. It's just a really solid show. I think that possibly the horror angle or something to it might turn people off from it, but the show is essentially The X-Files with a sort of paranormal religious bend to it, and I think it works really well in that regard. Season 1 was one of my favorite things. I didn't think the show was going to come back for a season 2. It was. Season 2 has been even better than season 1, so a real shame that it hasn't gotten any recognition here. For anyone wondering, we'll go through how the rest of it turned out. Preacher did take the number 2 spot with 12.5% of the vote here, so a lot of people still liking it. Actually, it was also split with Lucifer. A lot of people like that one, also getting 12.5% of the vote. And down there is Walking Dead with 8.3% of the vote, and Man in the High Castle taking 4.2% of the vote.
How? Man in the High Castle is so good. Oh my gosh,
I think just possibly being on Amazon, maybe a lot of people just aren't getting exposed to it. I think that could possibly be the case for some things here. Oh, shut up, Alexa. Nobody mentioned it. Talking to me. I felt the same way with Runaways getting so little of a vote in the previous category. I think just being on Hulu, not a lot of people are checking it out, although they should. I think Runaways, although not one of the best shows of the year.
Was the Handmaid's Tale too highbrow for us? Were we not allowed that one?
Which one?
Like I said,
Sorry,
this one I just had to.
Which one?
The Handmaid's Tale.
The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not too highbrow, but like I said, some of these I have to get more populous with it because I didn't want to just throw things in here that was going to get trounced. Like, I knew, like, okay, I got to pick Game of Thrones. Nothing else is going to win against it. I can throw however many shows in this category. Like, I also really like The Expanse for the sci-fi category. I think it's the best sci-fi show on TV, period. But nobody watches it.
Yeah.
Nobody watches it. And it's a crying shame. So yeah, Aaron, Game of Thrones. You can talk about it some if you want. Sorry, we got off.
No, I feel like
what some of our favorite shows.
Well, you and I had our recap episode right after the season wrapped, and I feel like I got to say pretty much everything I wanted to say about the show. I, for a long time, had signed off of Game of Thrones because I felt very like I just really couldn't stomach what it had become for a while there. So catching up on this season and even last season, like the show's gotten better, but I still am only kind of finishing it a little reluctantly. I think a little bit of just like, okay, I just want it to be over. I just want it to, I just kind of want to see it through because I've started it. And I feel like this has been such a mission, but it's never going to be what it was in the beginning with all the politics and the intrigue. Like you said, the game part of it needs to come back for it to really be super solid in my mind. But I knew as soon as it was on there, I was like, oh, well, obviously that one's winning.
If I can use an analogy, if Game of Thrones was a board game, say Monopoly or something, we're past the phase where we're bartering for which hotels we're going to buy and who has to pay what rent. We're at the point where the family is flipping over and trying to wrap it up. So, yeah, things are going to be probably not quite the same for going into the last season here. But we'll go ahead and skip to the next category. This was one that I was really looking forward to seeing how people really were feeling some of the performances that we got this year, because I think there's so much out there, so many actors that did a great job. I wish I could have filled this with more things, but like I said, it was a category which I kind of saw some of the winners possibly taking shape just for some of the preliminary discussions that I had, so I didn't want to put things in there just to fluff out the category. This one is Best Performance in a Film. Our nominees for this one was Hugh Jackman with Logan, Ryan Gosling with Blade Runner 2049, Cillian Murphy with Dunkirk, Ansel Elgort with Baby Driver, and Adam Driver with Star Wars The Last Jedi. Coming in at the number 2 spot in this category, it was really coming right down to the wire. Really the late push changed some of the results in this category. But taking 21.4% of the vote was Adam Driver in Star Wars The Last Jedi. So this one is interesting. It kind of shows maybe what some of the benefits of the movie were. It ranked quite low in terms of votes for Best Sci-Fi Film of the Year, but people overwhelmingly really liked Adam Driver's take on the character of Kylo Ren. Aaron, what do you think about the result here for the runner-up?
I actually voted for our Kylo Ren here. Ooh, the character isn't as strong as I want it to be, but Adam Driver just does it so well. It's such an interesting part, and it's kind of fun to see a villain who is, yeah, Adam Driver, big baby, and it's actually a lot of fun to watch.
David?
Yeah, I think he deserves recognition for it. He was one of the few highlights that I had from The Last Jedi, which obviously I'm infamously against. But yeah, I think Aaron's right. But they're not. I don't think they did enough of his character. But he still, whenever he needed to step up to the plate, he did it magnificently. He's got this petulance. He's kind of what you wanted Anakin to be in the prequels. And it's very interesting to see that, this is how Sith Lords develop. He seems genuinely angry in an unstable, threatening manner that he could turn on anyone at any point. Unlike Anakin, who was just really whingy about everything. Kylo Ren just seems full of rage. And he's a total snowflake about everything. Everything upsets him. But in a good way. I don't think he had quite the moments that he had in The Force Awakens. The moment where he throws that tantrum with the lightsaber in TFA was added a whole kind of dimension to the character, which I felt they were going to do more with in The Last Jedi, but they didn't. But yeah, he absolutely deserves it. I mean, Adam Driver's just a fantastic actor, full stop. I just love him in everything he's in.
Yeah, I said on our review episode that Adam Driver basically saved The Last Jedi for me. He was the highlight and standout of the film to me, and without him, it would have been a far, far weaker result. And he's also, really, when it comes down to it, after they did such a kind of hack job on Finn, he's my favorite character of the new trilogy. And I really hope in the next installment they take more time to focus on him because, yeah, Adam Driver just absolutely kills it as a character. Now, we go to the top spot here. So, taking home the best performance in a film for 2017 was Hugh Jackman with Logan. Captured 53.6% of the vote. It was really neck and neck between him and Adam Driver for a while. Then the late push that we got ended up throwing Hugh Jackman here over the top. And I think a lot of this is both really the strength of his performance in Logan. I actually think is the best I've ever seen Hugh Jackman in anything. Period, in any of his movies. It was really strong, and he brought something new to a character we had seen 25,000 times already at this point, and he brought new layers to it and made him a really tragic hero. And I think that, yeah, this is deserving accolades for him. I can't really see anybody else coming out on top of this category. I think it's very deserving that Hugh Jackman took it home here.
Yeah, we don't get to see Hugh Jackman play these meteor roles enough. I think the weight of just Logan's just sadness and just pain are so strong throughout this entire movie.
The deserving winner here. I think there is a degree of sentimentality in this because this is, well, we think is the last time he's going to play Logan, Wolverine, however you want to phrase it. Obviously, he completely nailed it from day one. He was the highlight of the original X-Men back in 2000, and he's always been a highlight. I mean, he even kept it together during the shit show that was Wolverine Origins, which was just horrible, a horrible, horrible film.
I would give him the award for just keeping a straight face throughout the whole production of that film.
But in this film, as Aaron said, he brought whole new layers and depth to the character. He carried around the weight of his past, and it's all the unspoken things. We don't really know what happened to lead Logan to that place, and we can only speculate. But given the kind of, the physical toll it's taken on him and the emotional toll, we have to assume it was pretty bad and pretty dark. But, I mean, he won't get Oscar recognition because it's a superhero film. But had it just been, you remove the...
Which I think is bullshit because you got to separate the genres sometimes from the performances. And I think, he was just one of the strongest performances I've seen in any film this year for this.
Had it been actually just a Western, a straightforward Western, and you remove the superhero elements, I think he would absolutely be in. Everyone would be talking about him, saying he's going for the Oscar. So, yeah, the Academy need to stop being such snobs about things. But who knows? Maybe they will nominate him. Who knows?
Hugh Jackman's performance with Patrick Stewart, just the two of them playing off each other in these roles that they've grown together with. They've played these parts so many times. So it really is just amazing to see the natural progression of where these characters might end up. And so it was really great because, when the very first X-Men movie came out, it was still in that era. It was still in that time frame of there's just a superhero movie. Don't take it too seriously. Mm-hmm. It was pre-Batman Begins superhero, so it was fine, but it didn't have to be great. And so to just see how far the X-Men franchise has come, especially with these same actors playing these same characters, is just amazing. It's so compelling to watch.
I'm going to put myself on blast here and admit something about both the performances in this film with Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. Patrick Stewart could easily been another nomination in this category too. I pulled a Kevin Smith. I cried probably 2 or 3 times during this movie.
I know so many guys who cried during this movie.
And all of them were on the strength of Hugh Jackman's and Patrick Stewart's performances. Like when, Professor X died, and like that was such a moment when that happened. I was like, no. And like it just started. I couldn't help myself. Then, of course, at the end of the film, and I know this amongst any fathers who have seen this film. The dad feelings hits you really, really hard to end, and it becomes a little tough to start to hold those in. So yeah, I had to let it go in both of those moments. Embarrassing thing there, but hey, that's the power that a good performance is able to invoke from you. And yeah, can't say enough about Hugh Jackman here. He absolutely killed it. Well deserving. So for the next category, we'll flip from Best Performance in Film to Best Performance in TV. This was another one here that was starting to look a little bit dicey for a while, and actually the late push that we had ended up flipping a number of these. So for Best Performance in a TV Series, our nominees were Aubrey Plaza for Legion, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau, I always have trouble pronouncing his last name, for Game of Thrones, John Bernthal for The Punisher, Andrew Lincoln for The Walking Dead, Thandie Newton for Westworld, and Millie Bobby Brown for Stranger Things. Coming in at the number 2 spot, actually taken over from the person who was in number 2 for a very long time, was Millie Bobby Brown with Stranger Things. Really, she continues to be a standout and iconic in the role of Eleven. So, David, what do you think about Millie Bobby Brown being the second place runner-up in this category?
I think based on the nominees you put forward there, I think she is the strongest in them all. Simply because she is so young. She's dealing with a character who is very complicated, but also is a bit of a cliche in a way, because that's what Stranger Things deals with. But its magic is that it always adds a lot of depth to these archetypes. But she is a phenomenon all to herself. She just sells the role, and she just does a lot with very, very little. She doesn't overdo anything. She strays away from hysterics. She's both likable, but she carries a degree of fear with her as well. You're never really sure where her character's going, if she's just on that tipping point of becoming an antagonist. And she's just remarkable, and her career, I think, will be magnificent if she carries it on. I'm disappointed she hasn't won, basically. But if I could add someone else to this list who I think should have been, but it would have been too late given when it happened. But I have to say, I think Peter Capaldi also deserves some recognition. His performance in the Christmas special, which I've given a glowing review to on HeroIndex.net, was just absolutely spectacular. Absolutely.
Well, listen here, I was considering, but you Brits already were taking up far too many of these roles over here anyway. I had to be a little bit more judicious too.
I don't think he didn't warrant it until Christmas Day. I think, he's always been an interesting choice as a Doctor, and he's always been utterly committed to the role, despite having some very dubious scripts to work with. But, finally Moffat came good and gave him an episode worthy of his talents, and yeah, by God, did he nail it when he had to. His 2 soliloquies at the end, yeah, they reduced me to tears. A Doctor, during an era of Doctor Who that I've not been particularly fond of, I was really surprised it got to me that much. So, yeah. But yeah, Millie Bobby Brown, shame she didn't win, but hey-ho.
Yeah, she brought so much to the character that really could have... It could have gone so wrong, I think, if they'd gotten the wrong actress for this part. It would have felt... So many of those kids would have just felt like over the top and cheesy and dumb. I think Stranger Things could have become very cringe if they hadn't cast it so well. So it's really nice that she is getting the recognition, and she seems to be composing herself just in general, like during interviews and with the media.
And she's a joy anytime you get
absolutely to see her. Like, she just has all this confidence that I think she's going to have such a great career if she decides to stick with acting and keep going. And I really hope she does, because I would love to see her in just pretty much everything, I think.
Yeah, I think she's the most promising female child actor we've come across since Jodie Foster. She's got a similar air to her, like Jodie Foster had back in the day. She feels like an adult trapped in a child's body, really.
Yeah, we all love Bobby, but there can only be one winner for this category, and taking 42.3% of your vote, Aubrey Plaza for Legion comes out on top. This was my vote for this category.
Same.
And one I'm pretty happy with the results for, because I didn't know Aubrey Plaza had this in her. She always plays a very downbeat and awkward character. She definitely has some of this in Legion, but she shows such a range and so much a variety of emotions and just things you would never come to expect from her as an actress, and one that has been popular for quite a while. And in the role of Lenny, aka the Shadow King for Legion, she just knocked it out of the park and continued to get better and essentially bring something new every episode. I can't think of a performance that I've seen on TV that really had to cover so much ground over the period of one season.
Absolutely, Marcus. I completely agree with you on all things. We see Aubrey Plaza so often playing, very, I guess, average characters. They're very, yeah, you get that quirkiness, that kind of like, she gets to play interesting characters, but this was just steps beyond what I think anybody would think to cast her as. But I think she was absolutely the only person. After seeing her in this role, she's literally the only person I can think of that could have played this the way that she did and just really sold me on the character. And she's such a driving force of the entire series that her casting was probably the most important of the entire show.
Yeah,
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I've only seen a few episodes of Legion, but I was very impressed with her. I think she takes her cues quite a lot from Helena Bonham Carter as Marla Singer in Fight Club. I think it seems to be a few I don't know, but I know the season gets even weirder as it goes through. I've only seen the first 3 episodes, but yeah, I can see why she's on the top spot, because it was a revelation. As much of a revelation as Millie Bobby Brown is, she's really only known for that. Aubrey Plaza had to take, like Erin said, she's kind of TV's Zooey Deschanel to some degree, even though Zooey Deschanel's on TV as well. But she's in that kind of mould. So to take that kind of persona and turn it into something with a lot more manic and darker energy, it shows that she's not just a quirky, pretty face, basically.
Yep, she has really shed off the role of hipster darling and taken it into a new thing with this character. And I think that, definitely, David, if you continue watching Legion, you haven't seen anything yet in terms of her performance. She gets so much better and so more varied and swings so wildly in terms of what she's portraying. And it's like I said, she comes off as a new character almost every episode, and it's really interesting to see how she progresses. So just due to some time constraints, we're going to try to hurry up, get through the last categories here. So next one is Best Director of a film this year. This one was really, really, really tight. This was the most contentious possibly of any of the categories that we had so far, because we had such great products coming out this year. So for the categories for Best Director was Matt Reeves with War for the Planet of the Apes. I always struggle to get through these apes titles. It's War of Planet of and Thing in Apes. Okay, whatever.
All the prepositions.
Denis Villeneuve for
Monkey Wars.
Denis Villeneuve for Blade Runner 2049. James Mangold for Logan, Taika Waititi for Thor Ragnarok, Christopher Nolan for Dunkirk, Patty Jenkins for Wonder Woman, and Ryan Johnson for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Really barely coming through at number 2 right here for the runner-up position was Denis Villeneuve with Blade Runner 2049. By pretty much most accounts this year, he came through with one of the most visually striking and well-directed movies of the year so far. David, I think he was actually my pick for this category.
I can't remember who I picked. Oh, I do remember who I picked. I'll wait till the winner's announced before I reveal that. I mean, he owes a lot to Roger Deakins' sumptuous cinematography in that film, but he did a masterful job of directing it. I think my issues with the film rely purely on the screenplay, so I won't hold any of that against him. He was fantastic, but he is a fantastic director. He's got a near spotless CV at the moment. So, fair enough. Runner-up. I'm interested to see who wins though.
Aaron?
That was the one. I think that might be the one big movie that I missed this year, so I can't say. But by all accounts, it was well deserved. So
Yeah, Denis Villeneuve, whenever he makes a movie, he's going to be an instant contention and discussion for all sorts of year to end awards. So, yeah, seeing him get possible Oscar shakes and Golden Globe nominations, all that sort of stuff this year, we could expect plenty of that. And I think to your statement, David, yes, Roger Deakins absolutely deserves to get a lot of recognition for the beautiful cinematography in this movie, the best of any film that I've seen so far this year, at least from a purely visual standpoint. Blade Runner 2049 is my best movie for the year. Now, for the winner here, which this tells you how tight it was, the winner here got 25% of the vote, so not very much more than our number 2 here. It was really, really tight for a long time, split between those two, but finally the winner takes shape, and that is Taika Waititi for Thor Ragnarok. Probably a surprise pick out of here because we have so many well-known, capable, popular directors here. This is really a who's who of directing talent in Hollywood right now, and it's Taika Waititi with his weird little film Thor Ragnarok that takes the top spot this year. Aaron, why do you think that people really seem to latch on here to Taika's direction and why he came out on top for this category?
I mean, I think going back to what we were saying before with Ragnarok, it's just such fun entertainment that the flaws of the movie are a lot less pronounced than they could have been. It feels very seamless the way that the story kind of pushes forward. So even though there's stretches where not a lot actually happens, or there's some like timing issues when you kind of jump back and forth between the different stories, it doesn't feel that way in a way that, say, like Star Wars, I was very, very aware. I was like, what is the timing here? What is going on? When are these events taking place? I didn't feel that at all when I was watching Thor Ragnarok. It felt very cohesive as a product and just visually very beautiful. And I think what it really comes down to is the performances that he got out of his actors. He breathed new life into all of the characters. Like, each one still felt like themselves, but just almost evolved a little bit. Like, Thor felt like he had been chilling on Earth for a couple years since the last time we saw him, just kind of, just acting more like Chris Hemsworth a little bit, but in the best ways. So I think just he had a lot of elements that really tied themselves together for this. That being said, I think my favorite director was actually Edgar Wright, because Baby Driver had some faults, and yeah, the Kevin Spacey connection is really unfortunate right now. But to watch all of the subtext that Edgar Wright always puts into his movies is just so beautiful to watch unfold, and to see all the song lyrics and the graffiti on the background, and it just was a very, very entertaining movie for me personally. But focusing on Ragnarok, I can absolutely see why it won. Why Waititi won.
Yeah, I think it goes to show, and I'm glad that our readers have recognised this, that auteurs take all kinds of different shapes. He is by far the least accomplished director on this list, I think, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have any strengths. And like Erin said, the ability he gets to get performances, very natural performances, very human performances out of his cast is almost unparalleled in Western cinema at the moment. Comedy is a dead genre in cinema, especially in America. There's just
oh boy,
yeah. But he is the one last bastion of it in kind of English speaking countries. Every film he has made has been hysterically funny, and Thor Ragnarok was no different. I was really worried that Marvel would, that he'd just succumb to the Marvel formula and just have to play it straight. But no, he gets his own little character. He talks about his mum's boyfriend and stuff like this. Which is,
I gotta say, Korg is probably my favorite character of any film this year. Just as soon as he comes, hey man, I'm cool.
And
gonna start a revolution.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, imagine, that's appeared in a multi-million-dollar, massive, big-budget blockbuster film. And yeah, he got to have his way with it. And yeah, I'm really glad our readers have recognised him. I vote for Patty Jenkins. I think that was the film that impressed me most in terms of direction this year. I thought Wonder Woman was pitch perfect in how it was directed, and she even got a feasible performance out of Gal Gadot, which it takes some doing, I think. Having seen her now on Saturday Night Live, it's like, yeah, geez, you did a really good job there, Patty.
Well, and especially she was fighting an uphill battle with DC pretty much the whole way. So the fact that she still was able to put so much of her own vision into it and protect so much of those performances that she got from so many of the characters, I definitely do think that she didn't get nearly enough credit for what she was able to accomplish.
Yeah, especially at this stage of the game. I feel like on every DCEU film, there's like the director there, and then like there's a studio exec with like a giant pair of scissors, like, this one doesn't work out. We're gonna trim this one and bring in another shot from a third script that we have. But yeah, I can't dispute the results here. Taika Waititi really did a great job with Thor Ragnarok. I think is probably one of the steadiest films, front to back. It starts great. The middle part is great. It ends great. And there's just so many hilarious little touches and nods here throughout the film, and even some subtle things that you don't quite pick up on the first time. When I watched this movie again, I realized that when Bruce Banner transformed from the Hulk back into Bruce Banner, he could only understand Thor, and he almost doesn't talk to any other characters in the film. Actually, he only talks to English-speaking characters, so he only talks to other Asgardians. He doesn't actually understand what any of the other aliens are speaking. I was like, that's a nice little touch, because now it finally understands, although they're speaking English to us, so we can understand him. He is from Earth, and he doesn't actually understand anyone else. There's all these sorts of little nice little nuggets in there with this movie. And I think, Thor Ragnarok was such a crowd pleaser in terms of just both comic book films and a comedy within itself, that one of the great things I take from this is that this is like a litmus test and proof positive that a Masters of the Universe film could work. So, whoever has the rights to that movie, they should take note of Thor Ragnarok, because I think it's the closest thing we'll see, like He-Man or something like that, possibly done well for a long time. I hope if that goes anyway, maybe Taika takes that on after doing whatever he does next too.
I'd be down for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right. And just to show how the rest of the votes shaped up in this category, to see how close it was, Christopher Nolan came in with 18% of the vote for Dunkirk. We had a two-way tie between Rian Johnson and Matt Reeves, both at 10.7%. And then came in last was the last spot was another tie. So James Mangold and Patty Jenkins split the last position spot here with 7% of the vote too. So yeah, it was really a quite evenly divvied up pie here. There's a lot of ways this all could have went, but I'm glad with the results here. Now, the last one we'll get into and discuss here is breakout performance of 2017. This highlights some of the new and up-and-coming actors that were able to become standouts in a year so dense with projects in cinema, especially in the geek realm of things. So here, our nominees were Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out, Daphne Keane for Logan, Tom Holland for Spider-Man Homecoming, Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman, and Bill Skarsgård in the role of Pennywise for It. This is actually one that shifted. I had already, if you go to HeroIndex.net, I've already written the article about this, but literally an hour after I wrote that and I closed down the polling, it changed. So in the number 2 spot was Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman, but the late push by you guys has changed that. Taking 25% of the vote now is Daniel Kaluuya for Get Out. David, it looks like people really spoke out, and although there was a lot of early appreciation for Gal Gadot and her performance and her ability to carry film of Wonder Woman, her first leading film, where we kind of knew her deficiencies as an actress, and she got a good performance and really got recognized early. But I think the strength of pretty much a nobody like Daniel Kaluuya and Get Out won everyone over with the vote here, and I'm actually happy with the results. I think this really kind of is one of the top performances that I've seen this year.
It's a strange one. I've got mixed feelings about this because I don't think Gal Gadot is a particularly accomplished actress at all. But I think in terms of star making, she is the biggest star of 2017. she has welded herself into that role as Wonder Woman in a way that no other.
Yeah, I was quite pleased with the initial results.
Yeah.
Like, I did not take issue. I completely understood why everyone thought Gal Gadot was deserving.
Which, in a way, she's welded herself into the role in a way that no one else has managed in the DCEU. I mean, Ben Affleck seems constantly non-committal about Batman. They've got to do something about Henry Cavill as Superman. That's got to be fixed.
Flashpoint cannot come soon enough.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And we haven't seen enough of the rest to make... Oh, no, there's Jason Momoa. I still can't imagine him carrying a film. Sorry, I just can't. But, yeah, so I'm surprised. I think... in terms of, but these things shouldn't always just be about acting. She's an action star. And we've had plenty of male action stars who probably couldn't even, pass an audition to play, I don't know, any level, an innkeeper an innkeeper in any Shakespeare play. But they've become massive stars. And I think Gadot's on the same route now. And she'll continue as Wonder Woman for a long time. So I'm surprised by that. But yes, Daniel Kaluuya, I've known of him for a while. He was in an episode of Black Mirror. He was also in a series over here called Psychoville, which was kind of a modern day riff on kind of Hammer horror type stuff. And he was brilliant in that as well. But yeah, he is fantastic in that film. I'm glad to see that he got some recognition. But I'm shocked that Godot has not won this outright. But there we go.
Aaron, who is your pick here?
I voted for Kaluuya, actually. I thought that his performance was just so compelling in Get Out. I really would have wanted him to have won, but I'm glad that he kind of pulled ahead and got second, at least. Gal Gadot's performance for me fell really, really flat. When I watch her performance, she's got this like passive prettiness, and that's about all I see come through in her face. Like I want more from Wonder Woman.
She furrows her brow as well. That's her one piece of acting.
Oh, I'm sorry. She furrows her brow.
That's fine. It works because that's what Wonder Woman does, isn't it? She needs a furrowed brow because she's either being determined about something or being distressed or looking disapprovingly. So a furrowed brow covers it. That's all she needs to do. So
you really gotta watch those wrinkles, though.
I just kept wanting there to be a little bit more passion, I guess, in the character. And she just very much has this. She's got the kind of loftiness that occasionally came through very nicely. But I don't know. There was just always a disconnect between how she would play a scene and what it felt like the scene was trying to call for. I don't know. She just never quite clicked for me as Wonder Woman. But I still do think that for the movie that we got and the series that DC seems to be putting out, I think that Gal Gadot could be coaxed into a stronger leading role, which I think Justice League kind of sets it up as, oh, Wonder Woman, we want you to take over the team. So I think with some more time, and Gal Gadot could become very, very strong at this character. And I am interested. I do hope that they keep her and don't just, flush her out with the rest of them when they inevitably retcon everything.
Yep, this is one I actually don't think my pick performed all that well. I picked Bill Skarsgård for it because I think coming into a role where just someone the level of Tim Curry made the role of Pennywise so iconic, and he was so burned in so many people's memories. To see how well received Bill Skarsgård was in this role and how much he brought to the role of Pennywise, and it was truly terrifying in the role. I thought he deserved it not here, but I like the way this hatched out too. Taking the top spot here with 32.1% of the vote came out with Tom Holland in the role of Spider-Man. This is one where it seems kind of weird, and I even had a trouble throwing Tom Holland into this role because although into this category, because although he's young, He's been in a number of films, but he hasn't really had a film that he's had to carry by himself and be the main character in. So I thought he was deserving of it, and I think that people really latched onto it because in the role of Peter Parker, something that we've seen twice already with Tobey Maguire and then
Andrew Garfield.
And then, Andrew Garfield in the role too. He had to do something different enough to where he could win people over, and everyone seems now to accept him as the one true Peter Parker. He's been able to embody the role more so than anyone else has, equally capable in the role of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, while also bringing something different and interesting to the role. I could see why some people think that maybe we could recognize someone who did things a little bit more significant. But I think the thing with Tom Holland is that, of course, Spider-Man is an iconic character. We've already had sort of an iconic performance to take on the character in the form of Tobey Maguire, then later Andrew Garfield in the role. So to come in and overshadow two actors of their calibers and to really become the Spider-Man for a generation of people and really for years of the MCU, as we're going to go into it with his tenure in the role, I think he did a quite admirable job, and I think he's quite honestly the perfect combination of Peter Parker, Spider-Man we could have ever wished for.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see him move forward in the MCU because he's going to play a pretty big part, by all accounts, in upcoming movies and upcoming collaborations. So it is really nice to see that they grabbed an actor that is young enough to make the part actually make sense. Instead of grabbing these older actors and then making them pretend to be high schoolers anyway, to actually just have a high schooler is very refreshing. And I think that he's kind of got the right charm to him just as a person, that he just seems very genuine, and that's exactly the kind of person you want playing Peter Parker. So it's nice to see, and I am very excited for his continued involvement in a way that I'd been very indifferent to Peter Parker and Spider-Man in the Marvel MCU, joining or not. I could have, gone either way, but now I'm kind of about it. I like where this is going.
Yeah, I think he shows a lot of promise. I wish he'd just been given a better film. I'm just not a fan of Homecoming. I just thought it was a Marvel by numbers, and for the return of Spider-Man, that was not acceptable. But yeah, I'm not sure he's quite overshadowed Tobey Maguire for me. I think he's got a way to go yet, but that's because Maguire had two better films. So if he gets those films, I'm very interested to see how he performs in Infinity Wars, because I loved him in Civil War. Although he was only in it for 5 minutes, I thought he riffed off. He felt very much in place, very cohesive with the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
So I think, he's the perfect Spider-Man for the MCU. I don't know if he's the perfect Spider-Man yet, though. That's my heart still belongs to Maguire in that regard. So there we go.
When I see Tobey Maguire do some parkour, he'll get my for best Spider-Man ever. But unfortunately, Tom Holland's been the only person that can do that who's occupied the role, so he gets my nod. I think one that stands out to me in this film, I think about some of the things that I really liked in it. And thinking back to it, I was a lot higher on Spider-Man Homecoming initially, just because being an immense Spider-Man fan myself. And I did really like how MCU-y they made the Spider-Man movie. It probably has more nods and Easter eggs and everything like that to the MCU than anything else. It was really like a fan appeasement for people who are into that sort of thing. But I think, too, the scene where Michael Keaton as a vulture traps him beneath all the rubble, and for that second you see Tom Holland become very frantic and panicked as Spider-Man. When you start to realize, holy shit, this is like a 15-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. At this point, he's just fucking terrified and screaming for help and desperate to get himself out. And that scene really moved me. That one, just 30 seconds, put more power and performance into it than I've gotten from any other actors who've portrayed Spider-Man so far. So I think if we could get more meat like that from Tom Holland, the future bodes very, very well for him in the role. And I can't dispute the results here.
Agreed.
All right, and that pretty much wraps it up for our best of the year. I think just as an anecdote, I want to turn to you guys and just ask you, what was your personal highlight of all the media, everything we covered this year? Aaron, what's your great takeaway for 2017? The thing you probably enjoyed more than anything else? Try to narrow it down. I know
Oh gosh, yeah, because I think, and we've talked about this a lot. This was such a year. There was just so much going on in from movies and comics and politics, and there's just a lot just happening. So I felt spent a lot of this year feeling very overwhelmed by the sheer amount.
Yeah, it feels like we got
things.
through 5 years worth of stuff.
Right.
Year.
Yeah, it just feels like there's a lot happening. And maybe it's just because this is one of the more recent things, but Thor Ragnarok really stood out as just this shining little ball of happiness. And I think I really needed that at the end of the year. So that one for me is probably gonna stand out for a long time to come.
David?
For me, it's something that I've glanced upon already, but yeah, I have to say the 8th episode of Twin Peaks is a masterpiece of television. It's something that I've never thought I'd ever see on television. I never expected. I don't think anyone ever expected to see it on TV. It is one of the finest works of art I think I've ever witnessed in my life, and it was a privilege to see it. I have watched that episode about 7 or 8 times already this year. I recommend our readers and listeners, if you haven't seen Twin Peaks or you're not sure about David Lynch, just watch that one episode. Most of it does stand alone as just an amazing, sensory, surreal but beautiful piece of work that completely rewrites the Twin Peaks mythology, but in a fascinating way. Other than that, I do agree with Erin that Thor Ragnarok was a ray of sunshine in a very difficult year. As much as I appreciate Get Out, it's very on the nose given everything that's going on at the moment. And yeah, which was proved when we had the meltdown over my Star Wars review at the end, that it's a fitting end to such a difficult year that we'd have to get such a contentious piece of media come out. So yeah, that's my summary, really.
Yeah, for me, really Logan and Thor Ragnarok were kind of neck and neck for me, but I think just for all the reasons you guys mentioned, I have to tip my hat to Thor Ragnarok. It was just, one of the best times I've ever had in the cinema. I can't remember the last time I laughed so hard. Just had a good time enjoying the movie and checking it out. It was one of the best theater experiences I've ever had the pleasure of having. Actually, I think my personal best is something that we didn't cover here. We covered it on Cult Curiosity a little bit, David, was The Disaster Artist. I think that's probably my favorite film of the year, period. It's the best time I've ever had in the cinema, period. One of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Just everything in it was an absolute standout. I don't know if you guys have gotten it there in the UK yet, but
I do need to get around to it, especially if we're going to do our follow-up. But yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. I am looking forward to it.
Television for me, I think my top thing was probably the season finale to The Punisher. I think it ended really on a good note, which you kind of know where this thing has to go, especially if you read the comics. You understand what has to happen to the character of Billy Russo / Jigsaw. Ben Barnes and John Bernthal made that final confrontation in that series so fucking hard hitting. It was one of the most disturbing things I've seen on television, but also one of the most effective too in the creation of a new villain. And to put a fitting end cap on a show as violent and blood curdling as the Punisher was.
I gotta say,
also,
sorry. I just want on that. I didn't blink at too much of the violence in that show, but as soon as we get to him just scrubbing Jigsaw's face down the mirror, I was literally screaming.
I covered my eyes.
I was screaming. My roommate in the other room just ran in thinking I was dying. I was so horrified by what I was watching, and that does not happen very often.
No, and Ben Barnes sold it so much. A funny anecdote for that is I was looking at an interview John Bernthal was having about that finale, and he said, prior to it, because that was real glass there on it, and the real audio was picking up, they put like this half mask on Ben Barnes' face.
Oh no.
And he was like, okay, like, John, if I give the signal, if I let you know, you gotta stop, because that means like the mask came off or something like that. And John Bernthal's like, yeah, man, I got it.
That's
so they
horrifying.
filmed the scene. They did it in one take too, and he sends his face going down all that broken glass, and Ben Barnes lets out that scream of pain and terror they did. And like after they wrapped it up, John's like, how the fuck was I supposed to know if that was like you kept going into it, so I just kept rolling. So yeah, all that crunching of the glass and everything we heard was real audio, and there was real danger in that moment for me. And I just remember, like, I was like covering my eyes, and my body was in a state of convulsion for that. And then they really bring it back down and ended on a good note with Frank. You see this whole veterans meetings all throughout the series, kind of peppered here and there, and see Frank Castle finally embrace that he needs to kind of deal with his demons a little bit and sit amongst all the other veterans and start telling his story and the things that bother him. I thought that was a very great way to dial it back emotionally from a moment like that, and really end on a note to where, in keeping with the rest of the series, it starts with character, ends with character, and I think they did a great job with that. But yeah, that's pretty much going to do it for us this year. So for everybody who joined us this year, listened to our podcast, enjoyed our articles on HeroIndex.net, thank you so much for all of your support, and we hope that 2018 continues to be another great one for media. We got more things coming up, plenty for us to discuss and talk about. Then just in the grand scheme of things, just take this year as a way of reflection and, of course, a hope for better things in the world. And I know there's a lot going on socially, politically, economically that can get us down sometime, but these are the things and the stuff we discuss here that really bring the light out in life and makes things enjoyable for us, and at the end of the day, just worthwhile. And understand that although we go through things and things change, we live in a truly miraculous and wonderful era of humanity, and to be alive and to enjoy the things that's out there. So with that, we'll catch you guys in 2018. That's going to do it for us for the year, and we'll be back with more things to discuss and more topics to cover here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll catch you next year. Oh, sorry. Everyone, have a great year.